Hello, everyone. Today is October 19th, and this is our second free session for Chinese traders on Wyckoff methodology. I'm Roman Bogomazov, and today with me, as usual, Jagobin translating. Hi, Mike.
大家好，今天是10月19号，今天是我们威科夫研究所第二次给大家的免费视频。然后呢，今天跟我做翻译的还是我的学生赵国本，然后他介绍了自己，他是罗蒙波戈马佐夫教授。
All right, so just to avoid all of the questions, first of all, I apologize. My internet connection was not on. And I don't know what's happening. There is some construction on the street, so very rarely that we lose the connection here in Bay Area, in San Francisco, but sometimes it happens, so my apologies.
首先来说，他给大家道歉啊，他说刚才的技术问题，出现一些技术问题，他说很少这种情况出现，但是呢，他现在他外面的街上大概正在施工，所以有的时候大概这个WiFi 不是很稳定，就是无线上网不是很稳定。
So, just to precipitate any of the questions, I think the schedule for these sessions is going to be the bi-weekly schedule of 3 sessions until January, and then on January 11th, we're probably going to have the start for the paid course.
先回答一下大家问的一直对这个正式课程一直问的问题啊。罗蒙老师说，正式课程大概最可能是在明年1月份开始，然后到1月份之前，他会每2周，开始一下这个免费课程，每2周一次。罗蒙老师在屏幕上写了，正式课程就是收费的课程，在明年1月11号开始。
All right, so what are we going to study? We're going to start from the basics, and I'm going to redo all of my slides, to reflect the Chinese market. So you will see all the Chinese stocks, Chinese commodities, Chinese indices, and this is how we're going to study Wyckoff.
然后我们内容包括什么呢？还是包括他以前他课程的第一堂课，就第一门课。目前来说，他大量的工作都在于什么？在于替换，把他因为他原来的那个课程里面的图表，股票图表都是美国的，他现在把它全部换成中国的股票、期货或者是那个指数等等这些东西，他做大量的工作这些方面。
Okay, so if you have any questions, we're still working on the details. So if you have any questions, contact Mike, and he could give you more details.
他说，如果大家有什么问题的话，因为我们现在还在把这个教程正在完成教程阶段，所以大家有什么问题可以给我们发邮件，给我发邮件也可以，因为我可以读中文嘛，所以大家可以把这个意见和建议都发给我。好，谢谢大家。
Okay. All right, now let's go to the material.
好，我们开始讲课。
So today we're going to start with the discussion of the markets because it's extremely interesting right now. There is a lot of volatility that comes to the market. So let's just review.
我们今天先谈一下上证指数，因为现在上证指数比较有意思。首先呢，它这个市场波动特别大，而且波动到了一个非常有意思的节点。
And our review has to start in the area of the accumulation that we had in 2012, 13, 14, which led to a very quick speculative run in 2015 into the hypodermic top.
我们的这个复习呢，首先从2012年、13年、14年开始，因为这一段来说，对于整个上证指数来说是属于吸筹阶段。吸完筹以后，大家看它迅速的做了一个投机式的拉升，然后这个投机的拉升有点像尖顶，有点像尖塔，或者我们说的帐篷顶。
Hypodermic top, and I have a schematic here, is going to be associated first with a speculative move up and secondly, with the urgent distribution.
罗蒙老师说这里有个示意图，大家看这个示意图就知道，这个尖顶式派发呀，或者是他说叫气泡式派发，有一个特点，这个特点是什么？第一个就是投机性迅速拉升，也就是说这个拉升不是它正常的增长，而是投机性的迅速拉升，迅速拉升拉到高点以后开始迅速的派发，就急切的派发。
As I'm studying Chinese markets and how Chinese markets behave, I'm realizing that a hypodermic top is a very common occurrence in the Chinese markets. And I think the reason why is because there is some selling by institutions or some distribution by institutions on the way up. And because there is no short-term rules, there is a distribution on the way down. So we could see that from the volume signature. They are distributing on the way up, distributing on the way down.
他说这种尖顶式派发，他在研究中国股市的时候会发现这种现象很常见，原因就是在尖顶式派发这个拉升的过程中，庄家其实已经在派发了。原因就是说在下跌的时候，因为中国没有做空的这个市场法则，所以说这些庄家不能做空。而如果是他们在这个拉升的过程不派发的话，那么下跌的时候他们再派的时候就只能再派发在低价位了。
And as we could see, there were a lot of selling in 2015 off the top. And then look at the volume signature after that. Institutions are very, very passive in this market.
大家看到15年的时候，这个拉升的时候，庄家有派发；下跌的时候，有很多人被迫派发。对不起，被迫是我说的，就是说，罗蒙老师说的是拉升和下跌的时候都有派发。派发完以后，再看16年以后，这个成交量比较低，所以说机构基本上是不活跃状态。
And even though we're saying that institutions are passive, we're realizing that at some spots, locally, they're going to be buyers, and at some spots, locally, they're going to be sellers. So there is limited institutional activity, and we probably would see more of the activity in actual stocks than, and not the reflection of the index.
在说16年到目前为止，很多机构比较被动的情况下，但它也并不是完全的没有机构的活动。在某些节点的时候，我们还是可以看到机构的踪迹。比方说，在这个点，罗蒙老师画的这个点，这两个点，然后这个点是机构在派发，前两个点这是机构在吸筹。所以在个股的时候，大家可能看到这种现象比较多，因为个股很多这个机构还是在做多啊，或者派发啊，非常明显。
So structurally, what do we have here? An uptrend, which is upsloping within the structure of a larger trading range.
结构上我们看到什么呢？结构上我们看到这里面有一个上涨的通道，然后上涨通道呢，在这里面有一个大的交易区间，大家可以看到这个大的交易圈，所以这个上涨的通道是在这个交易区间之内。
And then as we come to the point of the resistance, we have an attempt to upthrust above the previous resistance. And then we have a big failure, which we could identify as a change of character. And that change of character has a big spread to the downside on slightly increasing supply signature.
大家看到这个拉升，这个通道到这儿以后，到了前期这个高点，就在这个2015年年底的这个高点的时候，它试图冲上这个高点，但是呢失败了。试图冲上这高点，我们就所说的就上冲回落，但是它没有上冲得了，然后就开始回落了。这块大幅回落，这个回落的这个幅度，我们把它这个看比前期都大，所以我们把它叫做特性改变。这个特性改变的时候，价差增大，然后相应的。这里面的成交量、派发量也很高。
And please note that by this spread, we could identify the return of volatility. And we would be analoging this spread to the previous area where volatility has increased, which suggests as volatility increases, that the bias is going to be to the downside.
大家通过这个价差来讲，正好价差增大来讲，价差代表什么？代表着振幅，也代表着市场的波动。那么我们把这个价差这里面的这个价差可以跟前两个价差来相比较。那么通过这个前两个价差相比较，我们就知道，那么这个价差增大、振幅增大的时候，市场的方向是向下的。
And for those of you who watched our Yuku videos, we started the videos somewhere here in this area, and we made a call that the price of the both Shanghai and Shenzhen indexes is going to go down at least to the area of the support that was identified by the stop in action before.
罗蒙老师说，如果大家以前看我们的优酷那些录像的话，那么大家可能有印象，在这个点位的时候，罗蒙老师曾经说过，这里市场非常弱，非常大的可能性，这个价格下滑，滑到至少在这个支撑点。另外一个，罗蒙老师说，最近我们会把优酷的那些个录像再重新放回去。
And as the price goes down to the level that we identified as the first target, we see that there is a consolidation here. And by the size of the rallies, we're realizing that there is no big lift. Therefore, there are no bias. We don't see institutional bias coming in because they should be the ones who would be stopping the trend. And they should be the one who would be like in this case right here in 2013, trying to start some kind of buying wave, and we don't see that.
Okay, Rama, I clearly remember what you said here. 同学们，大家你可能记得，在前几次录像，在这个点位的时候，罗蒙老师曾经说过，这里面的市场非常非常的弱，在这个虽然是遇到了支撑，这里面大家看到向上拉升的波段啊，都非常非常的低。我记得当时还没有起来这个的时候，罗蒙老师说，这个向上拉升的波段和前面向上拉升的时候这种波段，它有这个成交量增加或需求增加的情况相比，这里面没有需求增加，所以说机构一点都不活跃，非常弱势。
And therefore, out of this weakness, we're thinking that we have two scenarios: continuation to the next target, or continuation to the target which is even below. And both of those targets are based on the lows and the highs of the previous accumulation area.
从目前的状况来说呢，我们已经跌到了这个支撑位，跌到了这个支撑位以后，就有两种情况。第一个是在这儿的时候，就是说继续下跌到这个支撑位，然后呢，或者是再大幅下跌到这个底下的支撑位。这两个支撑都根据前一段时间的吸筹区间的上缘和下缘来制定的。
For the price to stop and to reverse, we would need a price action, either where the price goes down and then has some kind of bounce like this, or the price goes down and then it gradually just stops and then starts to rally.
如果是说这个价格止跌反升的话，那么它极有可能有两种模式。然后罗蒙老师说，在历史上出现了这两种模式，一个是迅速下跌以后立刻出现了这种锤子线，也就是迅速下跌、恐慌下跌，然后立刻这个又拉回来了，然后在这里面进行盘整。或另外一种情景呢，就是像这个一样缓慢下跌，跌到最后的时候，然后在这个支撑线上，然后再开始慢慢的时间盘整。就这两种情况。
And what we would like to see after that is that the price would go up and would have the characteristics of the expanding volume signature and expanding demand signature. And only then we would be thinking that institutions are coming in and that we're having the stop in action, reversal, possible accumulation. And we don't see this here yet.
在这种这两种情况下的盘整完以后， 我们希望看到，如果是大家要看到反转，市场真正的反转的话，希望看到的是迅速价格的拉升，在这两方面黄色的上去价格拉升，然后同时相应的成交量会增加，成交量增加就代表着需求增加，在这种情况下，我们还希望也看到这里面有一些吸筹现象的存在，也就是在这里是下跌终止行为，然后呢终止行为完以后转向，也就是转向上，希望这里面有吸筹。这个时候只有在这种情况下，才我们说机构出现了，机构的踪迹，机构在活动。而在目前来说，我们没有看到这种现象，也就是说没有看到机构的活动。
Therefore, we are still in the downtrend, and it's still a question of where we're going to stop.
所以说我们的结论是，目前我们还在下跌的趋势之内。那么跌到哪里能够止停，不知道，大家要继续观察。
All right, well, let's look at the daily chart.
好，我们看一下日线图。
And here I'm using the schematic that is called, that comes from a TP formation of the distribution.
然后罗蒙老师呢把他的示意图再次放上来，这个叫做尖顶式派发，或者是它的这个 TP 是一个印第安的帐篷，这个帐篷非常尖，像个尖塔一样，所以说也叫尖塔式派发或尖顶式派发。
And here in the TP formation, we're seeing that the first move to the downside is going to be that distribution by institutions.
也就是在这种尖顶式派发的时候，大家看到，首先下降的时候，这里面有机构在派发。
In this case, we're seeing that the distribution has happened both on the way up and then on the way down, here and then here.
大家在咱们这个上证指数的这个案例里面，大家看成交量里面看机构的活跃，机构的派发，在拉升的时候，机构有派发；在快速下跌的时候，机构也在派发。
So after such distribution, the institutions are just inactive.
在派发完以后，机构处于不活跃状态，在示意图里是这样。
And that's what create that kind of like apex formation.
所以说在咱们的图形上呢，这会儿机构也不是特别活跃，也就是派发量没那么大了，而且它出现了一个三角形，或者叫楔形，因为楔形是向上的，这会儿出现我把它画成三角形，是因为底边是平的。
Then there is some capitulation on the way down by some weak hands that have some size, also maybe some institutions that are late to get out. The same happens on the way out of the next trading range, where some of the weaker institutions are selling their positions, but there is really not a big presence of institutions that we see in this downtrend.
在这里面呢，我们看到是跌破支撑，在那一刹那，很多比较弱的机构，也就是在一开始还抱有幻想，在拉升或者没有跑的机构，他们也放弃了，所以说这边出现了一个高量，这一个单日的高量，然后呢，又到这儿来，又是一个机构不活跃的阶段，机构继续大家在交易，有的人在派发，然后到这儿来又再次跳空下跌的时候，这又出现了一次，但这成交量比原来小得多了，又出现了一次机构的放弃。或者个人散户的放弃。
And we said that there is a very long-term support that we hit, or somewhere here. So we're expecting some kind of resistance for the price to go down at some point. And today's bar is a big bar, right? So I don't know exactly where it goes. But it comes on the news that there is going to be some kind of resolution of trade talks. So all of this of 2018, all of this is associated with trade talks between China and the U.S.
大家在周线图上还记得，现在的价格跌到了一个长期来说的支撑位，而今天呢，我没有看图谱呢，罗蒙老师大概看图谱了。 他说今天呢是有一个高量阳线在向上拉升，这个高量阳线大概今天有一个消息被放出来，说是这个大概是中美双边的贸易谈判大概要进行啊，还是怎么样？这么一个消息。那么目前来说呢，大家知道，从2018年2月份整个下跌的这么一个通道里面，都是根据这个贸易谈判相关的这个消息造成的。那么这个消息引导了这次拉升到哪儿，他不知道。
So that's exactly what we are waiting for. We are waiting for institutions to come into this market with some volume signature. And I'm looking at the current picture right now, actually. So the bar goes like this, right? This is today's bar. And then we have a slightly elevated volume signature, which is still lower of what we've had, let's say, on this bar right here. But the ease of movement of this bar maybe suggests that there is some kind of attempt to go up. And obviously we would be looking at these points of resistance right here to see what the price is going to do.
罗蒙老师说，今天的股票图谱他看了，大概是这个价差到这儿，然后呢，成交量比昨天稍稍高一点点，然后这种现象呢，就是相比这个 K 线来说，那么价差比较相似，然后呢，就是跟这个 K 线来说价差比较相似，但是努力稍微小一点点，所以说他说这有向上的轻松移动的倾向。通过这个向上轻松移动来说，有可能还拉升，还会持续几天。但到哪儿呢？这里面肯定有2个阻力线，一个这个是个阻力位，一个这个是个阻力位。我们现在要密切观察的就是机构有没有进入，也就是说，将来这里面有没有成交量？这个成交量从这里面看有没有机构的吸筹和需求进入。
In the course that some of you are going to take, we're going to study the formation of the trading ranges. Because as you could see, it's out of the trading ranges where we have this movement that comes, right? So we want to study the behavior of the price and volume in those formation in order for us to predict what's going to come next.
在咱们的正式课程里，我们首先要研究的就是这种交易区间的形成。大家可以看到，股市都是这个交易区间它的盘整，然后迅速拉升或者迅速下跌，盘整迅速下跌。所以说，我们首先来说要研究的什么？就是这盘整阶段它有什么特点？这个特点，然后通过盘整，我们判断出将来的突破方向，这样大家才会盈利，才能会盈利那段最大的那个快速移动。
So when we look at the trading range, we want to define 3 things. We want to define the bias, timing, and the character with which the price is going to start traveling out of the trading range.
然后呢，在罗蒙老师的正式课程里，对于交易区间，也就是盘整这段交易区间的研究的话，包括3个方面。第一，如果你看到这个盘整交易区间，你能学会研究的话，你知道将来它的突破方向是什么。第二，你会知道它突破的时间点是什么，也就是说到哪一点了就该突破了。第三，突破当时的特征是什么，也就是它是迅速突破呢，还是磨磨唧唧的。
All right, let's look now at something that you guys look a lot, and that is a chart of a steel. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the long-term picture, then we're going to look at a short-term picture as well.
因为他知道大家很多人在做这个叫期货，所以说罗蒙老师说好，那既然大家喜欢期货，那他就讲一讲期货。
All right. Well, we're going to start with the long-term picture. So we're saying that there is some kind of climactic run into buying climax, and then a big change of character that defines that from non-trending environment, we're going to go into non-trending environment. We're going to create a trading range, and the low of the change of character is going to be identified as an automatic rally.
然后那个既然大家在看螺纹钢，这是螺纹钢的周线图，也就是他要看一看这个长期的 情况是怎么样。那么从最早的时候呢，螺纹钢起来的时候，这个期货起来的时候，大家可以看到这个迅速的拉升，然后又迅速的下来的过程。所以说，它把这个叫做特性改变，也就是在这最高点，我们把它定义成购买高潮，这会儿是自动下跌。这个自动下跌跌得如此之大，所以我们把它叫做特性改变，也就是和前面的拉升的特性已经完全变了。
And please note, I'm using the schematic here, and look how the price closely follows the schematic. And climactic run, buying climax, change of character, and then add the law of the automatic reaction, which is being followed by an attempt to retest the buying climax. Attempt to retest the buying climax.
大家罗姆老师把他的这个派发的示意图放在这里面，大家看这个示意图上讲的情景和这个真实的股票图形有多么的相似。首先呢，大家看这是一个高潮拉升，也就这里面的高潮拉升，然后到这儿来购买高潮，也就是 BC 这点购买高潮，然后自动下跌，跌到一个支撑位，自动下跌，然后二次测试，看这两点都是二次测试，测试的是什么？测试的是购买高潮的这个点。
Phase C is going to be associated, if we have a higher high, which we do, is going to be associated with the upthrust of the distribution action, and then a series of tests, and we see exactly that, an upthrust of the distribution and a test.
然后呢，在阶段 C 的时候，它对应的是什么？对应的是上冲回落，或咱们这个示意图上写的是派发后的上冲回落。这个上冲回落的定义就是说，它高于购买高潮这个水平线了，这个时候它叫做上冲回落。然后呢，上冲回落以后有一系列的测试，就是对这一点需求的测试。大家看真实的情况也是这样，这是阶段 C， 然后呢上冲回落。在这儿有高于前一段时间的派发后的上冲回落，然后一系列的测试。
And then the next move is going to be to the downside, but it's going to be more pronounced, and there's going to be commitment to the downside below the area of the support on the sign of weakness, and then that's going to be followed by the last point of supply rally.
然后从上冲回落下来以后，基本上来说它的方向就是向下的了。它一直的，你看大家可以看到这里面有很多非常明显的特征。然后在下跌到底缘的过程中，会有一系列不断的向上的测试或者是派发，这些点位叫做最后派发点。大家看这儿有出现两个最后派发点，咱们这个真实图谱上又出现了2次、3次。甚至3次这种最后派发点。
And what we want to see on the way down on the major sign of weakness is we want to see some breaks. Break of the support, break of the support, break of the support. And I put here dashed line, so you kind of could see that there are quite a lot of breaks to the downside, after which the price, tries to rally into the last point of supply, and then every time it just fails. And that starts to define a downtrend.
在下跌的过程中，大家看到会有一些个跌破支撑的情况。比方说这一点，罗蒙老师画了一个这个支撑线或者趋势线，在这里就是一个跌破，然后在这里面又是一个跌破支撑，在跌破了这个支撑趋势线的支撑，然后在这里面是跌破了底缘水平线的支撑，也就是在这构成了不断的跌破向下运动，构成了整个的下降通道和下降趋势。然后在这里面呢，刚才罗蒙老师说了，我没有翻译出来，就是在这里面出现一个弱势信号，在这儿大家看到2个弱势号，一个是次级的弱势信号，也是跌破中间的支撑位，一个是主级别的弱势信号，跌破了整个的这个水平位。
So a lot of the times I have a question from students: would the actual price of the market follow the schematic closely? And obviously, it's not going to be extremely precise, but going from phase to phase, we're going to have the repeated price and volume behaviors because the price and volume on charts reflect the behaviors of people. And even when we talk about institutions, there are people behind institutions, so their behaviors are going to be repeated over and over. And if that's the case, a repeated pattern we will always be able to identify a repeated pattern.
然后在罗蒙老师教课的过程中啊，有很多学生一直问他，因为他一开始教的时候都是用示意图来教的，很多学生问他说：“你教的这个示意图非常的漂亮，但是呢，真实的市场会像你的示意图那样吗？”罗蒙老师的这个示意图是根据人性来制定的，也就是说人的行为的市场行为来制定的，它包括了价格和这里面只是有价格啊，真实的情况是有包括价格和成交量。他在讲课的过程中会把成交量也加进来，而这个市场呢，包括机构也好，散户也好，大家都是人，大家的思维都差不多，只是这些个机构它更加清楚散户的这个思维是什么，所以说它的这些个价格的波动都反映了人的思维情况，所以说和这个其实大家可以看到，咱们这个螺纹钢它前期的这个派发区间的情况和它的这个示意图有多么相似，大家自己看。
Now let's look at the downtrend. So the downtrend is being defined by the points of support rather than the points of resistance, and then we could take resistance line. Oh, actually both. You know, you could do the trend channel based on the points of support, the points of resistance, and all of them would work actually. We could see that both on the support side and on the resistance side, around the area of the stop and then the reversal, all of those points work out.
然后咱们大家看一看下降趋势，这个也或者是说大家下降通道，然后通过这不断出现的高点，然后画一条趋势线，下降趋势线，通过不断的这个低点，也就是这个支撑点，大家画一个趋势线，大家可以看到这个价格呀是非常规则的，在这个整个的趋势通道下降通道里运行。
So what's important to us here in the downtrend, a couple of spots. The first one is an oversold condition where we're seeing that the price goes below the support line. And that produces that oversold condition that attracts institutions. And they might come in and make some purchases here.
大家看到在这个下降通道中有几个跌破的情况，这几个在魏科夫来说是非常非常重要的情况。这点叫什么？叫跌破下降通道，这一点叫做超卖。这些点位是非常重要的，就在于什么？机构看到超卖的情况，机构就认为，哎，这个是有价值了，也就是说，它的价格足够低了。这些超卖情况有可能会吸引一些机构进来慢慢吸筹。
The second important point about the downtrends is that at some point they are going to be broken, and for the reversal of the downtrend and subsequent accumulation, we want to see that break of the downtrend. That's going to be the first requirement for us to start thinking that the bias is to the upside.
大家可以看到，在这个下降通道里面，其实是有两个，罗蒙老师画了两个，一个是主级别的，一个是在这里面非常贴近这个的下降通道。到时候在讲课的时候，罗蒙老师会告诉大家如何画下降通道的时候，它能够是魏科夫的方法。然后呢，在这里面呢，在某一些点位的时候，大家可以看到它下降通道是被打破的，也就是说它的下降趋势要改变。我们要判断一个下降趋势改变的话，首先要判断的就是这个下降通道的上缘要被打破，这里面有两个打破。所以说在这个过程中呢，我们要看到这个机构在吸筹，吸完筹以后，价格拉动价格向上移动，和这个打破上缘相呼应。
Now, I've talked about a hypodermic behavior that is very common in the Chinese market, and that's obviously behavior that is associated with the rules that the market has. Now look at this move to the downside and then the recovery, do you guys see how there is a little bit of the V bottom formation, which is basically a reversed hypodermic? So that's a very interesting thing here to observe as well. This V bottoming.
罗蒙老师谈到尖顶式派发的时候啊，大家可以看到它是一个倒的 V， 就是倒写的 V。因为这个尖顶式派发，和中国一个咱们国家股市的一个特点，就是说不允许做空，是相呼应的。然后呢，但是在这个图谱里面有一个 V 型的底，大家看到没有？这是个非常有意思的事情。
And we're seeing that institutions are coming back into this market. They're coming back because the price is so oversold and the price is so depressed that it starts to present some value for institutions, and they're coming in and starting to aggressively buy this asset, and that produces the first aggressive rally to the upside.
这个 V 型底它的造成是什么呢？是机构进入造成的，也就是在跌破了这个下降通道以后，那么机构认为现在是超卖了，超卖的情况就代表什么呢？代表这个价格足够低，有价值，而且呢，所以说机构进入开始吸筹，大家看到他们所带动的就是价格的迅速转向一个 V 型。
And look at where they're buying. They're buying off the lows into the high. They are still buying on the way down. We could see this from the volume signature here. Then some buying on the way up. So that defines a value zone for institutional value zone.
然后呢，看看那么这些机构是在哪儿买的呢？大家看到机构是从底向上买的，然后呢，在下跌的时候，这个成交量还大，也就是从这下跌的时候，机构也在买，然后向上一点，机构也在买，然后这样的话，到二次测试的话，这样的话就构成了一个罗姆老师上一堂公开课讲的，叫做机构的价值区间，也就是在这个交易区间内，机构是吸筹的。
So every time the price is going to go down into and violate that zone, this is where institutions are going to come in again, and they're going to produce some additional buying. And we could see that, in this area where the price was going down, that presented some short-term value, and on the overbought resistance that becomes a support now, they are buying because they're seeing the value, and they're pushing the price higher.
也就是机构它这个价值区间确定完以后，等到价格再跌回这个区间以后，再跌到这个上缘的时候，机构就开始进入，或者是跌进这个区间的时候，机构就开始进入，再去买。因为什么？机构的吸筹区间是在这个点位，也就是这个点位过去是超买的时候，但是呢变成了机构价值区间的时候，它就变成了一个机构再次进入买的这个点位。
So now, with their next buying, they're buying on the way up. They're buying on the next level. So as we define this new level, new value zone for institutions, we're seeing that the next time it's being violated, the price actually, has some kind of small demand coming in relative to the previous levels of the demand, and that's pushing the price up. So we are seeing the process where institutions are buying on the way up in this formation.
在这个图形大家来看，刚才说到这里是机构的吸筹的价值区间，也就是突破完以后呢，那么这个阻力位就变成了支撑位，也就是这个价格再跌回来的时候，机构又开始在这吸筹，相对应的就是这里面的成交量增大。然后机构在这里吸筹呢，吸筹这一段大家看，机构最活跃的吸筹阶段形成了下一个在不断升高的机构的价值区间。这个区间，然后呢突破完以后，这里面又变成了一个支撑线，然后等到价格再回到这个点位的时候，在这个位置的时候，机构又开始买入，相对应的就是这一段，所以说这个价格又开始向上涨了。 所以说整个结构来说，机构在价格拉升的过程中在购买，在吸筹。
Now, as we've identified elements of accumulation, we are being faced with the problem that at the higher level we should have some kind of resistance and maybe even emergence of the supply. Also, we're facing the problem that institutions right now are inactive. They got into this long-term position, they're staying in this position, they're not selling this position, but they're not buying either. So not selling and not buying by institutions might produce a trading range or some kind of reaction.
罗蒙老师刚才讲到，就是在这3个点位的时候，是机构在不断的拉升的过程中，它在吸筹，在这3个点位。然后但是呢，它把价格拉升的过程中，就遇到了什么？遇到前期的派发区间。大家看到这个前期的派发区间是在这儿的，所以说现在遇到这个阻力，前期的派发区间的阻力的时候，出现什么情况？出现在成交量减低。也就是机构不活跃的情况，不活跃代表什么？机构没有卖出，但它也没有买入。机构不买不卖的时候，有可能出现的情况，那么他说会不会出现一个震荡的，或者是这个交易区间？
So the if we would be looking at the long-term picture, and we would be thinking that there is some kind of one-to-one move out of this area of the consolidation. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen here short term. But if there's going to be some kind of continuation of the one-to-one move, we might have some scenario where the price might be up thrusting over the previous highs, long-term highs. And that would be just an attempt to overcome these highs that would need some kind of testing. So if we're thinking about the bias of continuation to the upside, we need to figure out what's happening here in this area short term.
大家看到这个吸筹啊，造成的是一个吸筹区间，然后造成了1:1的向上运动。也就是这个吸筹区间有多高的话，那么下一次向上运动大概有多高，所以这叫1:1运动。然后呢，这里面有吸筹，然后就造成了这个大概比较相似的一个高度的运动到这儿了。如果说我们说在这儿进行盘整，盘整成功的话，如果机构再次把这个价格拉升的话，那么这个1:1有可能到达前期的高点，不但到达了前期高点，如果是1:1的话，还有可能稍微突破一点。如果突破一点，这也就造成了什么？就造成了上冲回落，也就是刚才说的，如果价格再上次运动，而且1:1的话，那么造成上冲回落。上冲回落，大家知道以后的事情发生什么？就是说向下调整回这个区间之内。如果是我们这个运动会怎么样呢？我们还要看这一段期间的运动的价格运动的细节，我们要分析这段细节，才能知道下一次会怎么运动。
So now let's look into this area right here.
那么好，现在我们研究一下这块的细节。
And we're looking at the daily chart.
然后我们看日线。
It's just loading. Yeah, something's wrong with the internet connection today. It's just so slow.
Yeah, Ramon is good in my side. It's already the daily chart.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because, okay, now it's switched. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this trading range right here and look at the resemblance of the schematic and the trading range. The schematic is basically showing that after the initial stop in action, after the initial attempt to rally, we are going to have some kind of price action that is going to have lower highs, lower lows.
罗蒙老师呢又把他的一个示意图放在这里面，这是一个吸筹的区间的示意图。这个吸筹区间示意图，大家看，首先来说，这个价格下跌的时候，在这儿有一个终止，就终止行为。终止完以后呢，有一个反弹，但它反弹不过原来的这个高点，然后呢又有一个下跌的通道。这个通道的特点是出现了高顶不是低顶低底，也就是底是不断下移，顶也是不断下移。那么看这个螺纹钢的日线，在这段来说，在这里面遇到了一个自动下跌的时候，这是一个终止行为。终止行为以后有一个反弹，这个二次测试呢稍微突破一点点，然后就开始下跌，这个进入了一个下跌通道。这个下跌通道也出现了不断的底比底低、顶比顶低的这么一个状况。
Let's go through the institutional signature first.
那么还是研究一下这个机构的行为，机构的特点。
We're seeing that in 2017, there is quite a lot of the volume that comes in right away. So we're assuming because the price has stopped moving down and it started to move up, we're assuming that on all of this, in this whole area, we're seeing institutional buying, and it actually continues on the way up, probably until this point. So the value zone for us is all of this. And this is the institutional value zone.
那我们看一下2017年3月到这个几月，我就不太知道了，这好像没有画出来这一段的这个区间。首先大家注意的是这个成交量，成交量非常的高，它代表着机构的非常活跃。然后再看价格，价格是底比底高，顶比顶高，也就价格向上的。那么我们说，那么这一段时间呢是机构在吸筹。那么大家看这个对应的这个波段，我们看到机构在哪吸筹呢？在这段有吸筹，在这段有吸筹，甚至机构吸筹一直吸到这个高点。所以罗蒙老师就把这一段这个区间画出来，然后作为机构的价值区间。
Then they took some profit here. We could see that from the volume signature. They took some profit here. We see that from the volume signature. And then as the price went below an overbought condition and back into the value zone, it became attractive again, and institutions started buying again, where they see some value.
大家看到，然后在这个机构这个价值区间以后，这个价格被带动起来，价格带动起来以后，在一些点位就有一些派发，叫获利回吐。大家看，在这个点位相应的对应的点位有获利回吐，在这儿有获利回吐，在这个位置有获利回吐。回吐完以后呢，这个价格开始下落。当价格跌入这个价格区间以后
Mike, no selling here, no selling here.
Oh, sorry. 对不起啊，我大概没有看清罗蒙老师画的。罗蒙老师说，在这儿没有这个获利回吐，没有卖出啊，没有机构的卖出。然后呢，当价格跌进这个区域
just a little bit, you know, it's just more of the capitulation here.
OK. 罗蒙老师说，这个对应的稍的这个高量，指的是某一些个大概非常小的一些人放弃，而不是说大卖，不是说机构在卖出。当这个价格跌进这个交易区间之内，价值区间机构的价值区间之内以后，机构又开始有买入，所以说成交量又开始增高。
So we're seeing that if the price is going to go down to this level, this is going to be the level where they might buy again. And we should make an assessment as to what's going to happen if the price is going to go here, back into the value zone.
目前的价格在这儿，如果说这个价格再次滑落到机构的价值区间的时候，我们根据它前期的行为来说，有可能机构在这个点位会继续买入，但是我们要看它买入的特点是什么。
So one of the best rallies that we have had in the short term was this rally. This is one of the longest rallies that we have had. If we would compare it to the previous rally, they're probably going to measure the same way. But there is one interesting characteristic here that is different. When we look at the move of the previous rally, we see how strong this rally is on institutional buying. And on the next rally, we're seeing that the price is going down just because there is no supply that is being presented to the market, but there is no active institutional buying either. And because of that, it brings us to the question of what's going to happen short term.
然后呢，大家看这两个拉升波段，也就是在这整个图上来说，有两个波段，是非常拉升波段，就上涨波段是非常显著的。那么其中包括这个波段和这个波段。那么这两个波段呢，在长度上来说，在高度上来说比较相似，但这两个波段呢，在特性来说是非常非常的不同。所以罗蒙老师希望大家将来研究的时候要研究细节。那么看这个波段，这个波段呢是机构，咱们刚才说了，机构是在这里面有吸筹，吸筹完以后，这个波段以后迅速拉升。然后在这里呢，机构在这儿少有吸筹，因为进入它的价值区间以后，机构稍在这里面有吸筹，到后来的时候，机构就不再活跃了，不再活跃，表现在这段拉升的过程中，上涨过程中，价格上涨的过程中，这里面其实它的怎么说呢？只是说供应少了，供应减少，也就成交量减少，代表着供应也减少，所以说它的价格有拉升。但是呢，同时呢，机构在这里也没有吸筹，也没有卖出。那么将来的情况会怎么样？我们要看一下，最近的情况表现是什么。
So we have to look at what happens next in this area and compare that to the areas that we have identified before as potential selling or capitulation.
那么我们要研究这个近期情况，就研究在这段，然后相比较的就是前几段的这种下跌情况，我们跟它做比较，做类比。
There is some volume that is coming in, and we've seen that there is some selling that is associated with this volume.
我们看呢，在这个价格回调的过程中，这里面有成交量上涨的情况下，我们说，那么既然是这样，我们说有一些人确实是在卖出。
But the selling actually recedes, and the supply is becoming of poor quality.
到这个波段以后的时候，我们大家看这个成交量减低了，也就供应减低了，也就卖出也在减低。
And that happens with the price staying on the levels of the climactic action that was defined in phase A.
在这个成交量减低，也就是供应减低的这一块，它对应的是什么呢？对应的是价格在这个前期的购买高潮的附近，也就是这个购买高潮的二次测试是阶段 A。
And this is the first positive sign that the price can be supported at this level and not go down right away.
这个是比较积极的现象，因为什么呢？因为它的价格在这个点位或者是在这个支撑位被支撑住了，而没有迅速的往下跌。
The second positive is that even though some selling has come, meaning that the effort to the downside has increased, the result to the downside that we see is decreasing. So pressure to the downside does not push the price down, at least yet.
我们看到第二个比较积极的现象是什么呢？是尽管前期这块确实有一些个卖出，也就是说供应量增高了，但是呢，它的结果并不明显，也就是说，相比前面来讲，它的努力增加了，但结果并不大，结果比较小，所以说努力和结果不相符的时候，我们说这是第二个比较积极的现象。
So to us, there are two main scenarios. One is going to be associated with the value zone, institutional value zone. If the price is going to go down, then there should be some support that is going to be found here like it did previously in 2018. And the second scenario is that if we stay here and we overcome short-term highs, then there is a possibility of a continuation to the upside and to the new high. So we need to look at everything that is happening in this range.
那么就有可能出现两种情况。第一种情况呢，就是价格有可能还会继续下跌，然后跌到这个机构的价值区间，也就跌到这个价值机构要进入买入的这个区间之内，和上次的情况一样，机构有可能进入买入，然后把价格反转。另外一种呢，就是说价格没有跌破这个小的这个区间，那么价格呢？向上拉升，突破了前几次的这个点位，有可能这个价格就会继续拉升，然后突破。
All right, well, let's look at the short-term picture.
然后呢，我们更详细的往里面去研究，看看怎么样。知道吗？ I did not hear you.
Yeah, it's still loading for them.
Oh, okay.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're seeing that this formation has also a downsloping formation.
这是小时图，然后呢，那个罗蒙老师截取这个小时图，就在刚才大家看的那个下调的那个区间之内，那个通道。
So we need to compare the rallies and reactions.
我们把它拉升的波段和调整的波段都进行比较。
So we're seeing a rally number 1, 2, 3, and then 4.
它现在把
And
拉
it's
升
going
的
to
波
be
段，
those rallies. Go ahead.
它现在把拉升波段，然后标记为1、2、3、4这4个波段，然后呢，它现在也在画这个成交量或者是需求量。
So we're seeing how the first rally is the most aggressive, and it's a rally going into the climactic run. So there's going to be a lot of weak hands that are going to be buying, and strong hands are going to be selling or taking profit.
也就是说，看第一个拉升波段来说，这个波段非常强，也就是你看非常立体，几个 K 线就开始拉到这么高，而这个有点像高潮波段，就是说有点像那什么，它拉到这儿以后，就出现了一个购买高潮。购买高潮以后呢，在这购买高潮，大家知道这个特点就是说，强手或者是短线客，或者是波段客，他在这就卖出了，而这个弱手他在买入。
As strong hands are selling, that produces some selling on the way down, and we see that from different bars on the way down, a bar like this, a bar like this. So all of those are sales on the way down.
强手卖出就是带动了整个的价格下跌，在下跌的过程中，大家看到这几个画的大的 K 线都是高量 K 线、卖出 K 线。
And this selling takes us below the previous lows, creates the lower low. So there is a price structural damage there. But at the same time, it also short-term creates an oversold condition. There is some kind of value for weak hands that could be identified at this spot, and they will be buying. And this buying is going to be reflected in the volume signature. But as the price fails, we could assume that there's going to be some kind of continuation to the downside.
价格下跌，它其实跌破了前期的支撑，跌破完以后，大家看它造成了一个什么？造成了又是一个比较有价值的地方，就是很多人说，哎，价格够低了。那么其实这些人是谁？是弱手，弱手认为这里面是有价值的地方，然后弱手开始买，买完以后呢，价格又开始反转向上，反转向上呢，大家看到这里面有基本成交量，但是在这块失败的时候，就是反转没有需求了，没有动力再继续拉升价格的时候，这时候又开始大幅下跌。
The weak hands were hoping that the price is going to go higher and that the price is going to overcome the previous level of the resistance. But it fails, so therefore they are capitulating on the way down, and that's why the volume signature is increasing here. It's increasing because weak hands are capitulating.
弱手本来在这个拉升波段里说，它期望是价格能够继续上涨，而且突破以前的阻力位。但是呢，价格在这里面，这个向上拉升波段在这里面就开始失败了。失败完以后，这些弱手也开始迅速放弃。弱手也就是在这里的买家，他们放弃的时候，就造成了在这些下降波段里面更高量的卖出。
So therefore, as they give up their positions on the way down, on the next rally, they're going to be less active.
他们在这块放弃完以后，卖出筹码以后，那么再下一波的拉升的时候，他们就不会像以前那么积极了，也就是比以前没有以前那么积极了。
And that produces another price failure.
所以说，在这块还没有到前高的时候，又开始失败了。这次拉升又失败了。
That suggests that the short-term bias is going to be to the downside, and most likely, again, we're going to have a lower low.
也就是那么这种在这儿失败，放弃，就是说这个价格又开始反转向下，而且反转向下呢，这次又出现了一个底比底低的情况。
But on the way down, we've seen how supply signature is diminishing, suggesting that the selling is exhausted as well. So we have a big increase in the supply as we go into the middle reaction, and then we have a diminishing supply signature.
在这个下降波段中，大家看到的其实是供应的逐渐减低。那么将与前一段这一段时间不一样的是，这一段时候在下降的过程中，供应是增加的，而在这段供应是减低的。
So at this point, we would say that sellers are exhausted.
也就是说，卖出的人基本上供应已经豪竭了，也卖出豪竭了，豪尽了。
Now, the biggest question now, if sellers are exhausted, then what about the buyers? Are they exhausted? Do they have any power to lift the price up?
我们问题出现了，如果是供应已经被耗尽了，也就是卖出被耗尽了，那么买家呢？他们是累了被耗尽了呢，还是他们有继续能力来把这个价格拉起来？
And we've seen that the next rally is actually slightly overcoming. It's kind of like up thrust in the previous high.
那么我们看最后这段拉升波段，它拉升的高度来讲，比前一段稍稍高一点，有点像上冲回落。
And we also look at the character of the rally, and we're seeing that there is some buying that is being associated with maybe this area right here.
那么我们看成交量来讲，我们看到这个高量或者是高需求在哪儿？相对于这一段。
And that becomes the value zone with the overbought and oversold condition.
那么罗蒙老师画了一个价值区间，也就是说在这一段，这个买家他的价值区间其实是在这段的。那么到了上缘的时候，我们就是说这是超买；到了下缘的时候，我们在相对这个区间来说，我们把它定义为超卖。
So we would be talking tactics here at this point. And tactics are always about scenarios. So we would be thinking in terms of what the price would do, what characteristics we're going to have. And there are two scenarios here. Either we're going to bounce off the support as there is some kind of buy-in going to come in, or we're going to try to bounce and then just go down.
那么在这一点呢，我们就开始探讨交易策略了。交易策略的时候，大家知道，探讨交易策略的时候都是根据情景来制定的。那么出现两个情景，情景是一个，如果这个价格它在这块遇到支撑向上拉的时候，我们会怎么办？一个是如果价格没有支撑住，它跌进了这个价值区间的时候，我们会怎么办？
Our concern is this bar right here. because it presents some selling that's coming in. So the biggest question is if the selling is going to continue to the downside. And if this low is broken, and the price commits to the downside, most likely the next target is going to be just the low of this reaction.
我们目前关注的就是这根 K 线，这根下跌 K 线，因为它对应的是这么高的成交量，也就这里面有非常大的供应。那么到这儿也是看到供应，也就是说，如果这个上面的支撑被打破，这个 K 线进入到这个区间的话，有可能，那么这个就有可能变成它的目标，价格目标。
So what's important for us to see is what's happening in this range. And we kind of see that there is a small trading range right here, and then a big move to the downside, which we would characterize as a change of character. So it's just a change of character that could define the range. The price could also consolidate here, or a change of character as a sign of weakness, and in this case we're going to go down, and hopefully we're just consolidating here, after which we could just attempt to go up. So we need to go to a lower time frame.
也就是说我们要研究一下更细节，在这一段价格的表现是怎么样的，也就是量价的表现是怎么样的。那么我们大家看到这里面有一个小的交易区间，斜向上的交易区间，而这个交易区间以后，那么出现了这儿就是说特性改变，因为它这个下跌的幅度比前面都大了，所以我们把它叫特性改变。特性改变可以造成两种结果，一个是继续下跌，也就是下降趋势出现，这个价格跌进这个交易区间内；另外一个，这个特性改变可以造成一段时间的这个价格盘整。我们看到更小的这个时间段去研究那一段的表现。
It's still drawing mic for them. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is a 15 minutes.
这是15分钟线图。
Okay, and we're just looking at the latest move to the downside. And obviously we would be comparing that, to the previous attempts to go down, and they kind of all have the same structure, right? So they have some kind of pre-consolidation before that, the last final run, and then a reaction. So there are definitely analogs here.
我们刚说的那个小时图，就是这段下跌的这个，就是这一段。然后呢，我们肯定要跟前一段的下跌波段来做类比。那么它们呢，结构上都比较相似，都是前期有一段这个盘整阶段，有一个盘整阶段，然后拉升，然后下跌，盘整阶段拉升下跌。
What's important in these two analogs is the way how the price and volume behaves around the bottoms. We could see that every time the price comes to the support level that was defined prior in the consolidation, we see some kind of buying that happens on the way down. So this seems more of the institutional quality.
在这两个类比的这个下降波段的时候，我们比较看重点的就是说在底下这一块这两个这个结构呢出现同样的问题，也就是说，当它触及到下面的支撑点的时候，这一段非常相似。而罗蒙老师把它正好写了一个是弹簧。
And we would call those attempts to commit to the downside and then return to the range. And look how similar it is, commitment and the return to the range. We're going to call them the sprints.
也就是说这段的价格表现是他们试图跌破前期的支撑，然后呢又迅速的回到了区间之内。 这里也是试图跌破前期的支撑，然后迅速回到区间之内，他们叫弹簧效
And
应。
we will study that. We will study that in more details in the course as to how the sprints occur, why they occur this way, what are the characteristics of the sprints, and then how do the sprint recover back into the trading range.
对于弹簧效应呢，在罗梦老师的正式课程里面有非常多的讲述，也就是说，他们为什么会出现这种结构，他们不同的弹簧效应的结构有什么特点，他们也就是在量价表现上，然后呢等等很多吧，很多弹簧效应的细节都会在正式课程中进行探讨。
Now, the biggest difference between sprint number 1 and sprint number 2 is that on the return to the range, we are seeing in the first case some buying on the way up, and there is nothing here in the second case.
这两个弹簧效应的时候，大家比较会出现，大家会注意到两种现象。在第一个的时候，在返回交易区间的时候，正好有迅速拉升和需求的增高；而在第二个返回到交易区间的时候，这里没有需求，或者需求在减低。
And that's the biggest question, because if the price is not being supported on the way up, would the price be able to come into the trading range, have some kind of test, and then continue to the upside? Or would it just fail and undercut the previous support?
这里面就出现问题了。如果在这一段拉升波段中没有需求进入的话，那么后面的情况会怎么样？有两种，一个是在这里面形成一个小的交易区间，也就是说价格继续在这震荡，但是停留在交易区间之内，然后有需求进入的时候，然后再拉升。另外一个就是根本就没有需求，价格也没有支撑，迅速就跌到这个向下跌，继续下跌了。
So therefore, all of your trading decisions, short-term decisions is going to be based on how the price behaves. And I have not seen today's data yet, so you have to tell me what has happened. But if we are going to test and we will be able to hold to the support, and then specifically, after that, overcome the previous short-term highs on a bar like this, then most likely we're going to continue to the upside.
罗蒙老师说他没有看今天的 K 线图呢。如果你们大家有一直追踪在螺纹钢的话，可以告诉他，今天的表现是他在这里盘整，然后有一根阳线拉起来呢，还是怎么样？还是另外一种情况？
And obviously, if the price consolidates below the support, then the most probable scenario is the break to the downside.
另外一种情况就是说，如果是说在这里面进行盘整的话，没有支撑的话，没有需求的话，那有可能价格会继续下跌。
So what you have to do is something that we as humans don't like doing. You have to wait and to see how the price is going to unfold.
所以在这种节点的话，我们需要做的就是说，我们大多数人都不愿意做的就是等待，等待看这一段的表现到底是什么。
All right, now let's look at even lower time frame, 5 minutes, and we're looking at the last reaction to the downside.
那我们看更低的时间段，5分钟图，然后看最后一段时间的下跌表现。
And again, we kind of seeing the same picture where there is some selling on the way down, but then there is some buying around the point of value. And please note how this value point actually comes as an oversold, short-term oversold condition, and there is some buying here that stops the downtrend.
罗蒙老师在这个5分钟图里面，他画了一个交易通道，也就是在交易通道的底缘都是超短期的，就是非常短期的这么一种支撑，也是一种超卖的点。在每一个超卖点的时候，都会有支撑，有那个买家进入买起来。然后呢，另外罗蒙老师画到了在这些线段的时候，也就是阴线在这儿 阴线比较高的地方都是有部分卖出，但在这儿有买入。
So we kind of see that there is some buying that has happened here on the way up, maybe slightly before that on these bars. So we would be thinking that the value zone is somewhere here. So if the price comes back into this value zone and breaks it, then we would be thinking that the bias short term is going to be to the downside. If the price can hold on to this level and then try to go up, then we would be thinking that the movement is going to be to the upside.
罗蒙老师画了一个交易区间，也就在这里面是个短期的这么一个价值区间，也就在这里面有买入，甚至买入有可能在这些节点都有可能有。然后呢，那么就看今天的交易的表现是怎么样。如果是说这个买卖平衡，被打破，而且这个价格进入到这里面，有可能那么它的这个方向是向下的。如果是在这里能挺住，又买上去了，也就是说这个价值区间是一个支撑的作用，那么价格有可能是向上的。大家可能看到今天的表现了，大家可以讲一讲今天怎么样。
All right, well, that's it for today. Let's entertain any questions if we have, Michael. Mike, if we have any comments, I could also comment on that.
好，今天罗蒙老师的讲课就已经讲完了，然后大家看看有什么问题没有。Ramon, there's a student question. He asked the phase C is a testing. Is the phase D testing for the phase A, the selling climax, or the secondary test, or the bottom of down point previous phase C?
Mm-hmm.
Not this distribution, the
No
accumulation.
distribution. Yeah,
For the
accumulation.
accumulation, he's asking.
Okay, let me just find it. Okay, let's look at this chart. So the question is phase C, what is the test of phase C, right?
Yes. Yes.
So phase C lows are going to be testing the previous lows that were created in phases B and phases A. And because in phase A, we're going to have some kind of supply coming in. So in phase B, we're testing that supply. Is it present or not? Is it capable of moving the price lower down? And in phase C, we also will be questioning, do we have any supply that's coming in phase C? And is the price able to be stopped and then come back into the range? So this is the test of supply that was in phase A and phase B.
回答那个同学他在 email 里，在那个电子邮件里问罗蒙老师的问题啊，也就是说这个 phase C 它到底测试的是什么 ？phase C 它测试的其实是阶段 A 和阶段 B 的低点，这里面阶段 A 呢是自动下跌那个低点，阶段 B 呢也就是在这个交易区间这个低点。其实Ramon, there can be many lower points in phase B, right? They test all the lower points.
There could be multiple lower points in phase B, yeah?
Yes.
Is that the question?
Yes, that's a question also from that student.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the formation of the accumulation could have different variations. We could have the formation where, let's say, phase A defines the lows. Let's say this is reaccumulation, and then phase B could be quite prolonged, so it could be something like this. And then phase C, is going to happen and test the previous lows. So there are quite a few ways of how the price could consolidate and retest the previous lows. But the principle is going to be still the same. Phase C is going to be testing the previous lows that were created in phases A and B.
OK，继续回答刚才那个同学的问题啊，在电子邮件里问题，他问的是指 test 的前一个低点呢，还是 test 在阶段 A 和阶段 B 所有的低点？罗蒙老师说，这个 测试其实测试所有的低点。换句话说，这个结构，比方说，如果说我们说这个是再吸收区间，结构可能各有不同。你像罗姆老师在这儿画的是一个不断的出现低点和稍微高点的这么一个结构，在这里呢，罗姆老师画的是一个斜向上的结构。不管是哪一个结构，它的阶段 C，它 test 都是它测试的都是前期所有的低点。
Okay.
Yeah.
What else, Mike?
同学们有没有问题啊？我现在没有看到同学的问题。哦，等一等，我看到好像有。Sorry，让我们 give me a few minutes, let me look at。Oh, I think the students answer your question about the RB0 deformed steel bar. They say there is a small spring and then ready. And then another student asked, is all, yeah, can we divide all the training ranges into the phases? Or we make the label the phases is only for analysis? Or we label the phases for the trading? This question from
Well,
Liu Qing.
obvious.
From Liu Qing.
Okay. Luqin. Okay. Well, thank you for the question, Luqin. We are using phase analysis to identify the timing of when the price is leaving the trading range. That's our main goal. Because as we go through the phases and we're seeing specific characteristics of the phases, we are mostly concerned with phase C and phase D because it's where the trend starts. So once we're in phase C and phase D, we will be more active directionally on the upside or the downside. So you can't really say that phase analysis is all about analytics. It is also about trading as well because it defines the timing of when we have to become very busy.
回答刘青同学的问题啊，也就是说，我们这个阶段分析和阶段的标记是为什么呢？为分析肯定有，但是呢，最重要的，我们老师讲说是为了这个 timing，也就是说这个时间把握时机，把握交易的时机，也就是在每一个阶段来说，它都有不同的特征。我们其实研究的就是交易期的特征，这个特征在某一个特征出现的时候，就是这个价格开始迅速变化的时候，这一点也是和它后面的一些点位，是我们介入、买入或者卖出的点位。所以说，这个阶段的划分是为了分析，更是为了交易。
Well, follow me around this chart. I'm going to show some logic here. So look at where all of the phases C occur in the trading ranges. Look at that. So obviously to the upside, to the upside, to the downside, to the upside, upside, to the downside, upside, so you kind of could see that phase C emerges as the last test before the move in the direction of the bias. So we're extremely concerned about identification of phase C because that's what's going to help us to make money. That's what's going to help us to get into the position and then to make that trade. And we're looking here at the daily. So, you know, for those of you who are intraday traders for this particular commodity, it's extremely important to identify smaller trading ranges and anticipate the moves out of those trading ranges. And that's the whole key to the phase analysis.
我再把罗蒙老师说的再翻译一下。大家可能看以前的我们放在优酷里面的录像的时候，知道罗蒙老师讲了一个大的交易区间里面包括非常多的小的交易区间，所以说罗蒙老师在这里面呢，也是把这个整个大的交易区间，然后画了很多小的交易区间。比方说在这里，这是在底部的交易区间，当你找到阶段 C 的时候，它这个特征就代表了它要互相随即要拉升了。在这里又是个小的交易区间，这里是阶段 C， 这是个小的交易区间，这里是阶段 C， 这里阶段 C 出现了一个什么？出现一个上冲回落，所以说它把它定义为阶段 C。上冲回落的阶段 C 代表什么？代表着价格要迅速下跌。这里面是一个交易区间，这里是阶段 C， 迅速拉升，这里阶段 C 拉升，这里阶段 C 上冲回落以后又开始下跌，这里出现阶段 C 拉升。所以说你每次找到阶段 C 的时候，它其实就是代表着价格要迅速运动了，而且这里是将你是做交易的时候你的介入点位。
And this is what we're going to study in the course that's going to start in January, hopefully on January 11th. We're going to study the characteristics of different phases, which will allow us to define the timing of our entries.
也就是在我们正式课里面，对于阶段 C，如何划分，它的特点是什么，我们研究的很多。也就这些研究和你的学习，应该对你这个交易的时候哪点介入应该有帮助，很有帮助。
Okay.
Okay. There's a question. Can we see in the up move on the left? I think 上升趋势中的左侧测试 UT 是左侧的测试 UT 时是 CO 的运作。李涛，李涛，我不明白你这个问题，你大概要重新问一下。上升趋势中左侧的测试 UT 时，是左侧的测试 UT 是 CO 的运作，这是什么意思？我不太明白。如果李涛你能再说一下最好，好吗？老师，阶段划分可以用程序写出来吗？为什么？There's Solomon asked a question. Can you make a computer program to divide or label those phases? Why or
I have not. A lot of people have tried and they have shown me how they did this. And unfortunately, I have not seen a single software program that would identify the phases correctly. And I think it's very difficult because there are so many variations that we could have, as I have shown to you guys. So it's either has to be the program that accounts for all of the variations and all of the characteristics. Otherwise, it's just I have not seen anything valuable in the software that could help us out with phase analysis.
回答 Solomon 的问题啊，就是罗蒙老师有很多人找到罗蒙老师，把他的计算机程序和这个表现给他看，说这是我们对阶段的划分和标记。但是罗蒙老师说呢，这个股市变化太多太复杂，各种各样的情况都发生，也就是通过整体来讲，他还没有见到一个计算机的程序能够对于阶段的划分，做的特别好的这么一个程序还没有。Another question is, in the trading, the most difficult part to judge is what happened next. What we are doing is a hyperbolability thing, and the phase analysis or the phase division labeling is kind of like we want to improve the probability. Is that right? If we purposely divide any trading range into phases, is it too subjective? This question from Liu Qing again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a very valid question. I think it's a very good question because when we look at the chart, there is always going to be some kind of subjectivity that an analyst is going to have. So our goal with the studies of the price and volume behavior is to be as close as possible to the correct identification. And obviously, it's going to require some time and some practice, but you know, and sometimes we're going to make mistakes. There is no doubt about this, and I don't want to be untruthful to you guys and say that, you know, for instance, even with all of my experience, I know exactly what's going to happen. That's not the case. So it's only through the practice, and we're trying to identify the price and, you know, the volume characteristics correctly. So it's going to take some time, you know, to get there.
我念一下刘青的问题啊，刘青的问题是交易里最不能确定的就是后面的行情，我们做的是只是一个概率，分阶段是为了提高概率的一种方法，对不对？然后有时刻意的去划分这些阶段，会不会太主观？罗蒙老师说呢，刘青这个问题问得非常好，这个划分或者说我们判断对这个阶段的研究啊，确实是存在主观的成分，而且呢，我们要做的就是说更加准确的，或者是更最大程度的去进行正确的观察和判断。当然了，这种所有的这种观察和判断呢，都存在一定的主观的因素在里面。而且这种提高概率的研究呢，只能是说你通过大量的实践和大量的那个实习练习来进行达到。确实存在主观的因素，但是呢，但你通过这种研究和练习以后，确实能够提高很大概率的去提高你这种研究的概率或正确的概率。
But there is a very interesting way of how we could actually solve this problem. So let's look at this example. For instance, the price commits to the downside. And here we're thinking, is this a spring or is this a sign of weakness? One belongs to the accumulation and one belongs to a distribution. So how do we solve this problem?
罗蒙老师说有一个方法呢，可以帮助大家提高这种准确率。比如说，在这一段的下降波段，不是下降波段，就这一点，因为它突破了支撑，那么我们有可能说，哎，在突破的时候，在跌破的时候，那么它是一个弹簧呢，还是弹簧效应呢，还是一个弱势信号？那么这弹簧效应，它就是说，它是在吸筹，在弱势信号的话，它也表示它在派发。那么我们如何能够提高这种判断的概率呢？
So in the accumulation, if this is a spring, we're going to have a situation where the price is going to commit to the downside and then come back. And we're going to have a point of confirmation that indeed this is an accumulation. And we still have a lot of room to trade on the way up.
罗蒙老师说，如果它是弹簧效应的话，那么它在跌破以后，它会迅速的回到交易区间之内，而且回到交易区间之后，它这里面有一个叫做弹簧后的测试，这一点测试点是一个确认，是它是不是弹簧的确认。而我们出现弹簧测试以后，这里面还有很大的一段空间来供我们进行交易盈利。
In the distribution, we're going to see a major sign of weakness committing to the downside, and the rally after that is going to be not great. It's going to be weak. And then it's going to break to the downside, and this is where confirmation of the bias is going to come. And then the rest of the move we can trade.
如果它是派发的话，如果这里是弱势信号的话，那么它在反弹的时候，它会没有那么强劲，有可能是非常弱的，而且呢，最后它会跌破这个弱势信号的这个点，在跌破这个点的时候，它是对于这个是弱势信号的一种确认，而跌破以后的这段是我们进行交易和获利的一个阶段。
So you could see how the price commits to the downside, goes up, retests this, and then at this point, here is that confirmation that we were looking for. And this is a confirmation of the bias to the upside. So therefore, all of our trades starting from this point are going to be to the upside, whether they're going to be the trades, breakout trades or retracement trades. All of this we could trade.
大家看这一点是跌破支撑，跌破支撑以后呢，价格迅速回到区间之内。这里面有一系列的测试，这里面你看，这里面一系列测试，测试完以后，再次突破这个点的时候，这里是最后的确认，也就是它是弹簧效应的确认，也是它对吸筹区间的确认。确认完以后，那么就看你是什么样的交易者了。你是在这点是突破交易者，你还是说它回调到这点以后的买入交易者，在这儿突破的交易者还是买入的交易者？那么整个这一段大的这个拉升空间都是你的获利空间，都是你可以进行交易的。
We're not concerned about buying at the bottom and selling at the top. What we are concerned about is trading in line with the trend and then taking about 50 to 80% of the movement of the trend. If we could do this consistently from every time or every other time at least, we will be extremely profitable.
也就是说，我们做交易员或者是威科夫的这个交易方法，我们并不是说我们去抄底、逃顶，我们并不这么做。我们做的是说，在这个确认的点出现以后，我们把这个方向已经确认了，在这一点我们开始买入，在这个方向已经跌破以后，在这个整个趋势跌破以后，我们卖出。我们没有逃顶，也没有去抄底，我们只是抓住中间这一块。中间块的利润有多大？50%到80%。如果你能够持续的做到只抓这中间的50%到80%的时候，那么你就绝对可以盈利了。
All right. I think that's it for today, guys. Let's just stop here, Mike, if we can.
Sure. There's many questions. I think we encourage the students. How about we encourage them to email those questions? Probably we can answer them next time. 好吗？
Yeah, sure. So in 2 weeks, let's have the next session planned for the 2nd of November.
Okay.
And we could answer questions. And yeah, emails would be great. Give us your questions, give us your comments as well. Hopefully next time we're going to look at something else and some other commodity or the market. And meanwhile, just send us your questions.
那么我们今天就到这里。然后罗蒙老师说呢，大家问的问题非常好，也非常感谢大家在这里面跟他互动。然后呢，希望你们把这些问题再总结一下，然后呢，通过电子邮件，如果你们想问他什么问题的话，然后这样来问他，然后呢，他可以在下次，也就2周以后再做视频的时候，来给大家进行解答。
All right. Well, thank you so much, and Mike, thank you for translating.
好，谢谢刘青的问题，谢谢志伟的问题，谢谢 Solomon、李涛、陈杜，谢谢大家，Teddy，我知道，然后李立强，谢谢你们，谢谢大家的问题，然后谢谢大家过来参加活动，跟罗蒙老师互动。罗蒙老师说也谢谢我这个翻译，所以谢谢罗蒙老师 ，Thank you， 老蒙 ，Really appreciate。
Sounds great. Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
好，2周以后再见，谢谢大家，再见。